The frustrating thing for me is that every time I catch up with politicians, I offer them money. I never sort of ask for something which is going to cost the system money.
Mm.
I'm going to say, look, this has got a benefit. This is not just got a health benefit, it's got a financial benefit. Yeah, that's the, and yet, despite the fact that I offer between $1 million and $50 billion, depending on which politicians I've caught up with, on an annual basis, it doesn't go into their pocket. I can still remember catching up with one of the pollies, and her aide was sitting there. I said, look, just please, I know you're taking minutes. Could you please note that I am bribing the minister here with $30 billion per annum? Could you write it down? Just say, note that Dr. Fettke is offering $50 billion. I think it was $50 billion. And that's the cost. If you can actually turn around the cost of, one of the times I got reported to the medical board for inappropriately reversing someone's type 2 diabetes on national TV. People will go, you're kidding. I go, no, I'm not actually kidding. It was reported that it was inappropriate to do it. And yet we've got the ability to turn people's diabetes around within 24, 48 hours. We've got, you know this, Anthony knows this. We all know that if you actually take a diet, you stop eating unnecessary carbohydrate, you will reverse your diabetes. You'll get better control of it. Whether or not you'll be fully cured depends on whether it's type 1, type 2, whether or not you go back to eating it. Whether or not you reverse the damage already may depend on different organs. But nonetheless, you've got the ability to get total control or dramatic control with a reduction of medications as well, with a low carbohydrate interference. And this saves the hospital system $50 billion per annum, roughly, give or take $10 billion in Australia on an annual basis. Now, that money, unfortunately, will mean less money for the pharmaceutical industry and less money for the ultra-processed food industry. It means, from my point of view, less money for the farmers that are producing the cereals, the grains, the canola oils. But they could do
Hopefully
the
more for the
regenerative.
beef farmers. Yeah.
Well, the vast majority of our animal-based agricultural industry is on non-arable land. It's not on the most arable land. It's on the sloped land. It's on that 4% or 20% of the world's surface,
And it's
which
fully free range and organic up in the Northern Territory and Northern WA, where the cattle aren't seen for a year until they're rounded up and, sometimes put on a ship and sent away.
I, we caught up obviously at the Regenerate meeting, and for me, it's so frustrating to see the path which has greater noise. And you should have a chat to Belinda about the blue zones. And I know she presented there, but she's done further work.
Great.
And we watched the blue zones on Netflix through clenched teeth, pushing this plant-based agenda. But on one of the community tables, there was a huge leg of lamb being cut up. But Dan wouldn't have, failed to point that out, that this is what they're eating as their staple diet is an animal-based one.
Mm.
Yet the messages coming out from something like Netflix or from we've got to go towards this plant-based diet. And it's not based on good science. It's definitely not based on good biochemistry. The outcomes aren't as predicted. Again, I'll talk about the blue zone thing because we watched it only just recently. I said, do I really have to watch it? She said, no, but I'd like you to. And there's to give my opinion on it as well. And Dan Button was saying, the Adventist health studies show this. Now, the Adventist health studies, it's done by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, based primarily around Loma Linda in California.
Yep.
They re-quote their own articles, their own studies 400, 500 times. So it seems to be well and truly peer-reviewed, but it's not. It's in-house. But what's really interesting, and I was talking about the Adventist health studies because they are the most quoted study in the world on the benefits of vegetarian vegan food. And do you know what the definition of a vegetarian is? They're eating meat less than once a week.
Meat less than once a week, right? Okay.
Yeah, hang on, they're still eating meat.
Yeah.
But that's vegetarian. And what about vegan? They're eating
No.
meat less than once a month.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
So it's not. They're not vegan.
Would
They're not.
because there's a great doctor on social media called Ankur, who's a emergency doctor out of India. I don't know if you've checked him out. You'd really enjoy talking to him. Um, he has all these patients coming to him, and they say they're omnivores. And then he asks these patients, "Well, how often do you eat meat?" And it's like, I eat 2 eggs and one small piece of meat a week,
Yeah.
and they're omnivores. So, but I suppose in this definition, he's put them in the vegetarian camp.
Now, I've actually done a podcast with him. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, he's
But
great.
we, if you believe the vegan agenda, then they're definitely not having anything to do with animal products.
It should be zero.
And the trouble is, even the vegetarian communities, the vast majority of them through Southeast Asia, are cooking their foods in an animal-based product, particularly ghee. And so they are getting the small amounts of micronutrients, the fat-soluble vitamins that they need. But those communities have incredibly high rates of iron deficiency anemias, particularly the women.
Low B12,
Low B12, yeah. So
diabetes through the roof.
but they are vegetarian with low red meat intakes. Well, I'm going to call it low meat intakes because I gave a talk to the meat industry. Why do we call it red meat?
Because it's red.
Well, no, it's not. Pork's a red meat. It's white. Chicken's a red meat. A meat. So why have we demonised red meat over white meat or orange meat or yellow meat? I actually remember the Black Lives Matter. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. There's a whole lot of politics about that. I actually used the hashtag at that point in time called hashtag Red Meat Matters. Linda said, "You really don't want to do that." And I said, yes. I said, "Why not? Put it up on Twitter and X and all that sort of thing." Because why are we discriminating an animal-based product based on colour? Think about it. Why are we discriminating against people based on colour? And so we're now politically correct. Well, stop discriminating against meat and just call it meat. Belinda's just written. She's finally writing her book. She's getting on doing it all. And I know I'm sort of seem to be advertising my wife. She's an amazing person. But she's written an entire chapter about pigs. Because different religions, different communities have different beliefs about things. And you may or may not be surprised, it all comes down to power struggles and control. And it's been happening for hundreds, if not thousands of years, depending on different influences. And those things that can be kept by the people versus can be taxed by the powers. And
a pig perhaps can live in a very confined area.
Yes, under the house.
Not for the peasants.
Well, no, demonised in religion by the powers.
Yeah, that's what I mean, to keep them off them.
Yeah, but however, they surreptitiously use them. So therefore, even though it's a dark sort of thing to have, and she can go into great detail. She wax lyrically about it, but it's so much of what we've been told of to eat comes down to power and politics and religious belief, and it doesn't come back down to actual environmental requirements. And when you actually take it back down to biochemistry, and I'm not pro-industrial food pathways, and factory farming and all that sort of thing, but we come back to our fresh local produce, support the local farmer, who's hopefully moving more and more, and a lot of farmers are starting to move towards a more regenerate practice and looking after the land. But then the big corporates come in and try and take the land, and it's part of the land grab, and that becomes a whole economic shift as well. I'm very interested in the fourth turning. Have you come across that?
I've heard a little bit about it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really interested. I've been doing a lot of reading about that and the cyclical natures. It's actually given me quite a lot of inner peace. Because if you actually look out at the media and you look out at the world and everything, it's total chaos. We've got children, we've got grandchildren, and trying to actually gain some sort of concept of where the hell the world's heading. it seemed, and I've actually, most societies, particularly Western societies, run through four turnings that last between 20 and 25 years, and we're in a period of chaos at the moment. And unfortunately, it generally ends in a period of a major world war or some sort of strife like that. But then there's a complete refocus of society on what's right and wrong, good and proper. And when I look through the lens of the concept that society runs in cycles, an 80-year cycle for societies, then there's a 250-year cycle of revolutions, and there's a 100-year cycle of currencies, and they all start to be blending in at the one time right about now. We've got total chaos around us. And part of that is this plant-based agenda, which makes no sense. Biochemically, environmentally, we've talked about this, how plant-based cropping actually takes nutrients out of the soil. Animal-based cropping or farming puts nutrients back into the soil. The centralisation of profits and society, and I think the next phase we're going through is a period of decentralisation. Comes back to our decentralisation of our food, our property, our financing, our communities. I was supposed to do a TED talk at the beginning of 2000, but it got cancelled because of COVID. And the gist of it was, and then they asked me to do it at the end of 2000 via video, and I said, no, I can't do it because it just happened. But without being smart, I actually described COVID happening because of all the things that were coming together in 2019. I compared it to factory farming. So if you put, and then the fact that I thought the world was, most humans are actually being factory farmed. So if you put animals in a bad environment, you give them bad food and you crowd them in, then ultimately they are prone to getting a single virus or a single disease that comes through and creates great havoc, and then you've got a cold. But we as humans have been factory farmed probably since the 1970s, when we really bumped up our processed food intake. And in that process, we started putting people more and more in cities, more and more high rises, giving them poorer and poorer quality food. We've developed this metabolic syndrome, which is completely out of control. 92.7%, I think 93% before, but that's the last figure that's been measured of the population are metabolically unwell. Then it was only needed one virus, one thing to come through and create an enormous amount of havoc. But all TED Talks have got to finish on a good note. You can't actually make everyone depressed at the end of it. So the answer really was that we need to decentralise our population, decentralise our food, and Tasmania is a great example of that. And as it turns out, through COVID, we fared pretty well through the whole craziness. And so I think we're going to go through, my prediction going forward is we are going to have a more decentralised society, more decentralised communities, decentralised currencies, decentralised government, come back more to a local government scenario. Hopefully it's not quite feudalism, but nonetheless it'll be a different transition. And in the process of that, we'll be going back to eating more fresh, local, seasonal, whole food. And with that may be an improvement in our metabolic health, because whatever we're doing at the moment is completely and utterly unsustainable.